So you may need or want to purchase a bike. What are your best options, especially to provide you with the best value? The catalyst for this video today was a conversation we had post-ride a few days back about what are the best options today to get the best value for a bike that is ever increasing in price. And we came up with 3 options. Option 1, of course, is buying from your traditional bike shop. Option 2 is trying the consumer direct. And option 3, buying used, either from a classified or from one of the services that are now offered, like the Pros Closet, Bicycle, and there are some others as well. I think there's Bicycle Blue Book, one mentioned. So I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes going through each one of these 3 options. So if right now you're looking for a bike, or you may be looking for a bike down the road, just to give you an idea of what your options are, and like everything else, there are pluses and minuses with each option, and you have to determine which is the best option for you. Now, of course, everybody right away started with the first option of buying from your local bike shop. I've been doing this for decades, and I've bought a lot of bikes over the years from my local bike shops. The biggest advantage would be you build a relationship. I have 2 or 3 shops in my immediate area that I frequent. I'm at the point now you walk in, they know you by your first name. They know what you ride, they know how you ride. And so I stop in oftentimes, just to chat with them. Maybe it's after a ride, maybe it's if I'm just running some errands and I want to stop in. I love just hanging out in a bike shop. So that's one of the big advantages, is that you build a relationship. And of course, that makes it a lot more comfortable to purchase a big ticket item like a bike. The other big advantage that I find with buying a bike from a bike shop is that you get to see the bike, obviously, in person, and you can also test ride it. And these bikes now are like cars, literally, with all the features they have, the complexities. And because you're paying so much more for these bikes now, you certainly would like to take it out for a test ride and see if it's something you're really going to like before you plop down, a sizable chunk of money. And so I'm fortunate in that the 2 or 3 bike shops in our area will allow you to take a bike out, for a nice test ride. And one bike shop in particular is right on the edge of a county park. And it's one of those areas where I do quite a few rides currently. And so I'll stop in. I have my shoes with me. They'll throw some pedals on the bike. I'll go out and take a bike out for a 15-mile, 20-mile bike ride. And I'll be out for an hour and 15 minutes. I'll take it on some courses that have a little bit of everything topographically. Test the bike out climbing. Test the bike on descents. Just get an overall feel for the bike. How the drivetrain shifts, how smooth it is, how easy it is to handle. And then I can make a decision. So obviously you can't do that with consumer direct. And it can be tough if you buy used, depending on how you're purchasing. So that's a huge, huge advantage, for sure. And the third big advantage to buying in a local bike shop is because you have that relationship with these people and you have invested by buying a bike at this shop. It can be easier and more comfortable if you have an issue. You take it in, they know the bike, they're going to stand by the bike, they're going to likely take care of you. So there's some huge advantages. Now, what I'm finding, though, is as the nature of the bike industry is changing, bike shops are carrying less stock. So whereas it used to be easier to walk into a shop, find your size, and then ask if you take it for a ride, it lets you take it for a ride, and then you can make a decision. Now, oftentimes, they don't have your size, in stock. And so you don't get a chance to take it for a ride. And now if you ask, well, if you have one brought in, can I take it for a ride? And the response is, well, if we order it, you bought it. So that takes away from me anyways, one of the biggest advantages of purchasing from a bike shop was that test ride. And that's where Consumer Direct is going to come in, in just a moment. But as far as the bike shops, go, they're in a tough spot. I certainly don't blame them with the escalating prices. But it can be a challenge to find a good buy in a bike shop. Now, what I do is I tend to wait and I'll buy new for the previous year. I just did this with a Cannondale last year. I bought a 2023 Cannondale Synapse in April 2024, and I got a real good price on it. And so I think that's where you can really maximize your value in a bike shop, is kind of wait until they're looking to move their bikes out. And that's what I did, with this Cannondale. And the other thing I do with the bike shops is they obviously carry different builds of the same model. And I find the best strategy is to not buy the top model or the top build in that model, but rather to buy the build in the middle. And the example I give you is that Cannondale Synapse that I bought. I bought the Carbon 2. The Carbon 1, which is the top build, that runs over $9,000. Whereas the Carbon 2 retailed for roughly $5,600. The differences were the drivetrain. You had Dura-Ace on the Carbon 1 versus Ultegra Di2 on the Carbon 2. The handlebars were not carbon, and the Carbon 1 had Cannondale's hologram carbon wheels, very nice wheels, versus aluminum wheels on the Carbon 2. So what I did was I waited for the Carbon 2 to go on sale, and so they were trying to move out. It just so happened they had my size, and they dropped the price down to about $3,600. And so after selling a bike to make room for it, it was less expensive for me to buy this Carbon 2 Cannondale than to put a new electronic drivetrain on my previous Cannondale. So that worked out well for me. And then what I did, since I didn't need Dura-Ace, Ultegra Di2 is perfect for me. What I was able to do was I took the savings and then I bought aftermarket carbon wheels from Hunt. I've had good luck with Hunt wheels. And then what I did was I put nice tires on it. So there are ways to create value within the bike shop ecosystem. My buddies were teasing me that that's just being cheap. My wife's always using the squeaky noise. I call it value driven, because you end up with a nice build for a big savings. I did the same thing with my Trek Checkpoint. I ended up buying the SL6 instead of the SL7. SL7 was over $2,000 more. They do make an SL5, but it didn't come with an electronic drivetrain. The difference was the SL7 came with a SRAM Force. SL6 came with a SRAM Rival, which is a great drivetrain. I think it's the best value of the SRAM electronic drivetrains. And so with the savings, I bought aftermarket carbon wheels, and I saved myself a couple $1,000s, and I have a nice build. So my recommendation for anyone looking to buy in a shop is, certainly buy what you want to buy, but what I have found is buying that build that sits more in the middle versus the top end gives you some flexibility to customize your bike as you see fit, maximize your dollars. Now, the second option we talked about after our group ride was the consumer direct, which is always the more controversial, if you would. And it's really growing in popularity, and chiefly because of the price. Most consumer direct bikes are significantly less expensive. They often offer a lot of promotions. So right then and there, you're saving 40%, 50%. But again, you have to shop around a little bit. The advantages of the consumer direct is some of these companies will allow you to more customize your bike. So not just your fit, but also the components. There's a lot of different types of builds, different drivetrains, different types of wheels. And so you do have oftentimes a little more flexibility where you can do this as you buy the bike without paying extra. And when I go to the bike shop, if the stem isn't quite correct, they'll change the stem for me, but I got to pay for the stem. Whereas for my Fezzari, now Ari, the bike company, I was able to do that through their fit process. So the bike came fitted specifically for me. I didn't have to make any aftermarket changes to it. So for me, that was a big advantage. Their customer service is fantastic because they know people are wary of consumer direct, especially if you're not comfortable working with bikes. These bikes come in a box to your door. They're usually about 70 to 80% built. You're going to have to put the front wheel on, put the front handlebar on. For some of these builds, you have to put the rear derailleur on. Certainly put the seat post and seat, in, but it does not take long. And, normally you can build up one of these bikes within a half an hour and, get yourself out on the road. So the consumer direct is a feasible option potentially, especially if you're looking to get, a good build at a nice price. And they give you a lot of flexibility with different types of builds. And some of these companies give you the ability to swap out, whether it be handlebar width or stem length, maybe even crank length, depending on what the company is. So something to consider. I have two examples of consumer direct bikes in my collection. And mind you, I'm a late adopter to these consumer direct bikes. It wasn't until I was 60 years old that I bought my first one, because I was always a little bit wary of buying something sight unseen, especially when it was a bigger ticket item. But this first bike here is from a brand formerly known as Fezzari. They have rebranded themselves as Ari. And this is the Fezzari Veo SL, which is their aero road bike. This Ari, as it's now called, is based somewhere out in Utah. I came across them when I was just looking at what these consumer direct companies were offering as far as bikes go. And what made this company unique in my mind was their custom build. And what I mean by that is they have a 23-point measuring system that they incorporate to literally give you a customized build out of the box that you don't have to pay anything extra for. And that really intrigued me. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies whatsoever. But I'm a tough fit because of my height and my inseam and the length of my torso, and yet my shoulders are a little bit more broad. So my wife helped me go through the 23-point measurement, And then what I did was I called them. Because again, I was a little bit wary of purchasing a bike sight unseen. And I got this guy on the phone, and his first question to me was, well, how do you plan on using the bike? Because I wasn't interested in this bike. I had seen it on the website, but I was actually looking at their endurance road bike called the Empire. So when I told him I was looking for a bike that I was going to use for my hard workouts, my hill work, my tempo, he said, I wouldn't recommend the Empire. I'd recommend the Veo SL. And I said, well, that sounds nice and it looks like a great bike, but I'm 60 years old and not as flexible as I used to be. And I don't know if an aero road bike would be comfortable for me. And he said, don't worry, we'll build it so it's as comfortable for you as an endurance road bike, but you'll get the performance of an aero road bike. And I thought, boy, that's kind of neat, the best of both worlds. And as you can see, what they did for me, and what you do with the measurement is they ask you if you want to sit in a more aggressive position, if you want to sit in a more neutral position on the bike, or do you want to sit in a more upright position. So I set a more neutral. So you can see, the stack, they have raised that up. Normally an aero road bike, that stem would be slammed further down toward the head tube. So they gave me a little bit of forgiving height, and it really does make a difference. The handlebars, they made a little bit, they put on were a little bit narrower. Instead of 40s or 42 millimeter handlebars, I have 38s. Fit me fantastic. And so this was a bike that I was able to build up very easily when it came in a box almost 2 years ago. And it fit great. Didn't have to make any adjustments. And I've kept it stock except for the saddle. I changed the saddle. And since then, I have put a little wider tires on. It came stock with 28 millimeter Maxxis high roads. And I have now 30 millimeter Vittoria Corsa Next. Gives me a little bit more traction, a little bit more comfort. And since I run them tubeless, I can run a little lower pressure. So this is one company that's been very good to me, and especially if you're a harder fit, this might be a good option for you if you're looking at consumer direct. The second of my consumer direct bikes is my Priority Gemini. And this bike fills a neat niche for me. It's a bike I often travel with, as I said in an earlier video. It's a bike that I take out if the weather is bad, if the riding conditions are bad where I'm going. I mean, I rode this bike all through the winter in all kinds of muck and salty, briny water. And as you can see, the bike looks almost new. It's easy to hose down, easy to maintain. And I know I can just throw it on a rack on the back of our vehicle. My wife has a Priority e-bike, and we don't have to worry about anything. Hubs are sealed. The gearboxes are sealed. There isn't anything to degrease. There isn't anything to rust. It's just a great bike. And one thing about these consumer direct companies, if you're looking at this type of option, their customer service is fantastic. They know people are wary, especially, even though the prices of these consumer direct products tend to be significantly less, and they often run some really nice sales. So I think there's a lot of value in this option potentially, especially if you're in need of a bike sooner than later, and you may not have the luxury of waiting for the bike shops to run their sales. This might be a nice option. I have not had any issues in my experience with these consumer direct companies, and some of the guys that I ride with are looking into these options. There's a lot of different companies depending on your wants or needs to consider. But again, the Ari company, if you're a tougher fit, may be a good option for you, because they will do that at no extra cost. I think the Priority is a fantastic brand if you're looking for a very minimal maintenance bike. If you do a lot of traveling, it really is a do-all type of bike. You can. This is a gravel bike. It's very good on road, very good off road. You can put racks on this, load it down. It rides great. So I just wanted to give you 2 examples of consumer direct, because I was wary myself, and I have become more of a convert over the last few years. My first experience, by the way, was almost 7 years ago when I bought my wife an e-bike. And since then, I am not so hesitant to go consumer direct. The third option, and I've never used this option in my adult life, would be to buy used. Either through a classified ad or through one of the companies like Bicycle or Pro's Closet. I oftentimes scroll through these websites just to see what's out there. I'm amazed at the prices some of these folks are asking for their used bikes. Now, there are some gems to be found, without a doubt. But if you're going to go this route to purchase a bike, you really have to dig deep, take time, and be patient. Because you got to get through a lot of issues potentially with the bike. I think for me, my biggest concern is you don't know where that bike's been. And when I look at the pictures of these bikes, oftentimes, the frames are nicked up. You have scratches. The wheels are scratched. You can see where the bike has been dropped, or it's fallen over. And it's one thing if you're saving a lot of money and you don't care about the cosmetic aspect of it, but when some of these folks are asking literally just 10%, 20% less than what you could buy a new bike for, the red flags start going up. So I think it is a viable option, but you have to be especially careful because you don't know what you're getting, how the bike's been taken care of, and so I have a buddy that did very well, bought a Specialized Tarmac SL6, drove literally to Toronto, Canada from our Pittsburgh area, to see the bike, test ride the bike, and ended up buying it. This bike was hardly ridden. The guy was just looking to move it. And so he did very, very well. So there are some good values there. You just have to be extremely careful what you're buying there. And so I think in the end, what my advice would be for anyone, and what our consensus seemed to be, and some people are willing to do this, some people not, is whenever you buy a bike with any of these 3 options, you have to be patient. You have to do your homework. You have to really think about what you want or need in a bike, how you're going to be riding it, and take a look at your options. How can I mitigate the high cost a bit? What kind of flexibility do I have? And I was very wary of the consumer direct. because it's not going to be so easy if you don't like it to send it back. They say you can send them back. I've never had to send one back. I've had good luck, but unlike a bike shop, it's not that easy. It can appear daunting, but on the other hand, if you take your time and you're patient and you know how you are going to use the bike, because none of my bikes are duplicates. They all have their specific purpose and they work well for me. And I think if folks just step back and decide, what they really want or need, and then look at the options, the 3 options you have, and what is going to work best for you, because everyone's going to be different. I don't criticize anyone for pursuing any one of these 3 options. I think you can find good value in any one of these 3 options. It all depends on, sometimes just good luck. What's that old saying? It's better to be lucky than good sometimes. I think when you purchase a big ticket item like a bike these days, sometimes that comes into play as well. So I just wanted to take a few minutes, share with you what we were talking about the other day post-ride, because I do have some buddies that are looking to buy new bikes. They actually need some new bikes, and some of them are tough to fit. That's why I recommended that Ari brand for one of my buddies, because he's the opposite of me. He's real tall, real lanky, and so his inseam is a lot longer, but his torso is shorter, and so if you're a tough fit, a company like Ari might be a good option, because they do that 23-point measurement fit. And I got to tell you, like I said earlier, it's the best fit I've ever had in a bike that I didn't have to pay extra for. So whatever works for you, good luck in purchasing or looking for a bike. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. And you all have a good day.